everyone, and welcome to the Analytics podcast, Tech Unbound. And today we're going to talk about a very special and insightful topic, which is building a cybersecurity career with purpose and mentorship. And joining us today is someone special all the way from Canada. Her name is Kelly Onu, who is a cybersecurity expert with over 7 years experience. Yes, you heard that right. She has over 7 years professional experience in cybersecurity, specializing in application and cloud security. And she's worked with industry like finance, healthcare, tech, retail, helping businesses secure their apps and cloud environment to protect critical data. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Kelly Onu to the stage. Hello, Kelly. How are you? And welcome on stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you too, and it's been great, connecting with you and also finally getting to see you. And I hope we have an amazing session today. So before we start, there's something we do here at Analytics Podcast, just to make you feel settled, is to say what's like the one thing that's drive your week this week, for this whole week, just one thing aside the podcast and the topic we're trying to describe or talk about, something that drive you this week, like that you thought about that kept you going this week, that right, so just share that with us, then we'll start properly.
Yeah, so one thing is obviously getting ready for this podcast, excited, right? So I think that's one part of my week that I feel like I've been sort of looking forward to. So sharing my thoughts and ideas. And I think the other part is something interesting happened at work. I know this is still tech related, right? So interesting happened at work where my clients sort of had questions as to AI governance. And if we're like still keeping tabs with the news, we saw that yesterday the White House sort of created a briefing on safe AI. And I just think it's interesting to see that sort of everyone's single question is surrounding AI and how to govern it, how we can ethically use AI, and how we can secure it. So I think it's very fascinating that I can see the direct value of what I'm sort of presenting to my clients. So that actually inspired me. And it actually only happened like yesterday. So
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I mean, it's important to also look around you and look at how you can drive conversation that works around you. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, we get right on to it. But before we start, because we have people of story, and we like as much as possible to hear the backstory of our guests. So the first question would be like, what's your background story into cybersecurity, and what was it like? What was that thing that made you, feel like you want to actually go into cybersecurity?
Mhm. Yes, I'm happy to share that. So as you stated, my primary specialization is in securing applications like web applications on your laptops, mobile applications on your phones, cloud environments like AWS, Azure. But before I got to that level, right? So starting from the ground, so I've really always been like fascinated with computers and tech, even growing up. So it actually started with the gifts that my mom gifted me. It was a desktop, and I know like nowadays desktops are kind of fading away, but it was pretty much very popular like in 2000s, right? And so she gave me this desktop, a whole setup, and she pretty much left it up to me to figure out how to set it up. But I was able to within a few weeks I was able to figure out, okay, how do I use the internet? How do I listen to music because I love music? How do I browse the web is what we used to say back then. So that experience like really made me feel like I could be a good troubleshooter, a good problem solver. And that unconventionally like shifted me to being like the go-to tech person in my family. Because there's always that one person in the family where whether it's your parents, uncles, aunties, they would always ask you a tech question. Oh, how do I send this message? Or my email didn't send. How do I see if it goes this time? Or my internet is not working. How can I fix it? So because they saw that I was able to, because my parents saw that I was able to like figure out the desktop situation at home, I now automatically became like the tech expert in my family. And I also was able during that time in secondary school to take like computer science classes. And I would say at that time was pretty advanced because I was learning like a lot of programming like C++. Imagine taking C++ in secondary school. Imagine taking creating websites like web development. We did a lot of that on like Adobe Dreamweaver. We also moved to like the graphical designs part of things like Adobe Photoshop. I knew how to use that even before I graduated. So I just felt like that really was the hook, right? And so it was kind of easy when it was time to decide what I wanted to study in college or university, right? So I was just like, it's an easy pick. It's like I'm going to do IT, right? And so in my third year in college, I had the opportunity to apply for an internship. And the internship, although it was an IT internship at a small insurance firm, but I was able to work with project managers, developers, and then also security people. And so this is actually the start of my security story, right? So where I was able to get exposure to setting up firewalls, for instance, going through logs to make sure that there are no sort of persistent threats within your organization. And so that really piqued my interest. And right after that internship, I was just like, you know what? Let me specialize in cybersecurity because, as we know, tech is like very broad, right? It covers so many facets. And so I was just like, okay, let me do cybersecurity because this seems to be more interesting. And so right after that internship, so this was like summer 2015, 2016. Right after that, I was able to take an ethical hacking class in college or university, and I pretty much learned how to hack network devices. I learned how to hack applications, and that's really how I started in cybersecurity. And then, right after that, I was able to get my first full-time job after graduating in consulting. So cybersecurity consulting was really my first job, my first real job.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I mean, it's really great and inspiring to see how just a gift of desktop shaped your mind at early on. And that's why, when we are talking about how it's easy to just pick an interest and say, oh, this interest would then be your career path, even if, that's not going to be like the final career path. But at a very initial stage, it's also like strike that interest. And just like in your own case, that is what you can trace to your, let's say, start or background in the tech space or cybersecurity space. And because you mentioned like there are different areas of cybersecurity or in tech, and then you decide to another question or the follow-up response to that would be that there are various career paths. There are various paths for you to actually get into cybersecurity because cybersecurity is vast, right? And the question is, can you break down like the different paths that one can take within the industry, within the cybersecurity space? What are those different paths that you can take in the space? Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that's like one of the very common questions that people have. And I know typically when most people hear cybersecurity, you just think of hacking or like a group of hackers or like the popular Hackers Anonymous, where it's like they're pretty much bad people, thanks to like the narrative that movies, in the sci-fi movies have pretty much pitch in our minds. But cybersecurity has more variety than it's shown in public, than it's known in the common knowledge. So needed to make this a little bit simpler. Let's maybe focus on organizational cybersecurity. And so I think that way we're able to break it down. And typically when it comes to organizational cybersecurity roles, and meaning you're working for an organization, or at least you're consulting for an organization or contracting to an organization. So it's typically broken into two main buckets. So we have what we call the breakers versus the builders, or some people say the defenders versus the attackers. And so in an organization, like, right, so there are employees that pretty much safeguard that infrastructure, like it could be servers, databases, systems, endpoint devices, anything that is pretty much connected to, the internet, anything that's used to support the day-to-day business function. So that's what that category is. And so they're actually on the other side of things, like they're actually employees that are paid to break set systems or set assets to find those root cause or vulnerabilities, and then before those malicious hackers or, malicious people get to them. So I just kind of explained the builder versus breaker, and then maybe getting more into it, right? Just throw it in roles in there, because I think we need to get to like real world examples. So for instance, the defender side, These are people that protect and safeguard those systems. So we have like security engineers. We've heard of security engineers, application security engineers, cloud security engineers. We have security analysts. I think that's more popular on the entry level role, right? So we have threat intelligence specialists, and then we have security operations center analysts. So they pretty much defend and make sure that every sort of activity, every device activity, every network traffic is being monitored for threats and for anomaly. So these people are actually on the constant watch for new threats. They protect those assets, and they also pretty much guard those assets, right? So they're kind of like the sort of gatekeepers, I'll say, of the organizational assets. And then on the contrary, we have like, let's say, pen testers, because I know that's like the most popular role in cybersecurity. So pen testers are pretty much hackers that break into those systems. And what they do is that they typically would get, of course, access through like NDAs, access that is actually approved, right? So they're not like from the outside trying to break in from the inside. They're in the inside and then trying to break in to see what those loopholes are. And there are also other roles aside from these two buckets, right? There are some that play as an overarching sort of oversight team, like for instance, governance, risk and compliance, GRC. Those are mostly the groups that create policies, processes within an organization. So let's say you start a new job, right? Typically, they'll give you an acceptable user policy. So the folks that create those policies on how you can use your mobile devices at work, how you're able to browse certain websites over the others. It's GRC people that mostly they're the ground base of cybersecurity. So they create those standards and procedures for the builders and the breakers to follow. And we also want to see GRC, pass like policies and procedures. We also want to see them as the enforcers of compliance and regulatory standards. So in a lot of the sectors or industries that I work in, they're like heavily regulated. So like healthcare, tech, finance. And so there are a lot of regulations, like for instance, GDPR. If you're dealing with EU citizens, you need to be able to say that, yes, your systems, your platforms, applications all follow that process where EU citizens have the right to sort of consent, right? They have the right to consent. They have the right to withdraw their data if they choose to. There's also PCI DSS, which is mostly used for fintech companies or any sort of company that processes credit card data. Because you can imagine the credit card has your name, your address, details tied to your bank account. So pretty much just making sure that we are in compliance through those regulatory standards. And finally, I think another side is what is less talked about, right? It's program and project managers. Program and project managers are important all across like tech, not just only within cyber, but they're very important in cyber because any sort of security awareness training, if you're trying to do, let's say, phishing campaigns, right? You receive those emails where it looks like a phishing attack, but it's really someone behind the scene like testing to see if you're applying the knowledge of what you're taught in security awareness training to actually test a real world simulation. So it's pretty much the program and project managers that make those things happen. They also drive those compliance efforts, working closely with the GRC team. Let's say your company wants to migrate from an on-premise setting to, let's say, AWS. It's the program managers that drive those conversations and make sure that there are enough resources, make sure that there's enough budget, and also that those activities tie back to business objectives. So these are pretty much, I know it's a long list of different roles in cyber, but like I said, it has so much variety in it, and I don't think it's just so many opportunities, for you to specialize in.
I think it's really comprehensive the way you've started from two categories and then go into the various parts. And a quick follow up would be, which of the categories do you think you fall? The bakers or the builders, or the collaborator of the both?
That's a good question. So I've worked in both. So I've worn both hats. I'm kind of like in between, right? I think you need to have both skill sets if you really want to understand, because imagine sort of protecting something you don't necessarily understand, the threats in. Let's say, I know it's a big topic now, AI. You're rolling out AI in your organization, but you don't know like what are the threats with using AI systems. There's like, prompt injection, prompt poisoning, there's data poisoning. But if you're not able to understand how a hacker thinks, I think it's going to be very difficult for you to understand how to safeguard AI systems, as an example. So I've worn both hats in the past. Like I said, it's like I mostly specialize in application security, cloud security. So I mean, I'm seen as more of of a builder or a defender, because I am not per se looking for those vulnerabilities and loopholes. But in the past, I have, pretty much been a pen tester on kind of.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, And then I like that you mentioned like various career paths. And then the question from everyone would then be, what are those skills, both technical and non-technical, that would take me to those career paths? I mean, you mentioned one that is very, people are hard on GLC now. Everybody wants to go into governance weeks compliance. Everybody wants to do GLC. They'll tell you, oh, you don't need coding that much. Just go to GLC. That's like a soft spot. So what are those technical or non-technical skills that you need to know, or you need to have a very, very depth on before you go into, cybersecurity career path?
Yeah, and I think it's a fair question, right? Because I mean, what you've covered is quite a lot of rules, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So it's a fair question. And to answer this, right, in all fairness, I think it largely depends on what specialty that you want to go into, that I'll be able to sort of measure what skill sets you need. But I can give like an overall perspective of, I guess, what I'm seeing in the industry and what is important, right? So you want to start off, right, with understanding the foundational components of cybersecurity. That is a non-negotiable. So you need to understand what the CIA triad is. So the CIA triad is confidentiality, integrity, availability, and how does that affect your day-to-day operations at work? Like if you're a GRC, if you're AppSec, if you're a security analyst, if you're a pen tester, the core of cybersecurity is CIA. So it's kind of like, how is your role aligned to this? For instance, if you're in GRC, how are you creating security processes and policies that can enable automation of, let's say, vulnerability scanning, right? So that's like one question, right? The other one is, how are you able to apply, let's say on the more technical side, how are you able to apply strong encryption algorithms to protect user data? That's confidentiality. You want to make sure that the data that you are collecting or saving, storing, is being protected with industry standards. And then maybe steering away from the technicalities, right? What are the things do you need to look at to build that foundational component? I would say certifications are big in cybersecurity. I know people have mixed feelings about certifications, but I think it at least gets you, get your foot in the door. For me, when I started, within the first 2 years, I made sure that I had my Security Plus, because that was pretty much what every recruiter, every hiring manager wants to see on your resume. So I'll say starting off with Security Plus by CompTIA. I think also ISC 2. I'm a big fan of ISC 2. They had a free certification called Certified in Cybersecurity, and that would really explain exactly all the stuff I'm talking about with the CIA triad. It would pretty much give you a deeper understanding in an organizational lens as to what do you need to do, what do you need to understand and know as a cybersecurity professional, regardless of the specialization. And so just wanted to also include that there, because I know there are a lot of questions and certifications. And then for my most tailored technical crowd, like if you have like a development background, for instance, you may fit well into application security, which is, what I do, because you work closely with developers, right? You work closely with software engineers. You work closely with CI/CD systems, right? So these are automated ways of pushing code out to production. So I'm sure you're able to, you know how to code a script. You're good with like Python, potentially Java, Go, or whatever language that you can bring. That's great. But if you're trying to pivot into cybersecurity from a dev background, I think knowing what application security is would help you, and knowing it through, let's say, industry guidelines like the OS top 10 for web applications, for APIs, for also AI now, that would enable you to have the knowledge of what you're looking for within those security processes. So all this bread and butter of application security, and if you're trying to we get more tips, but just generally speaking, getting the foundation, understanding CIA triad, getting the right certifications, and then if you're specializing in more technical aspects, probably understanding scripting right will help you. But also just being able to be flexible. I would say. Be flexible with that.
All right. That was so clear. Thank you so much for that, Kelly. Okay, I wanted to ask you about the credentials first because the second one is like, what we do, what we say at Analytics, because we are a tech company that train people on these skills, is that as much as the credentials is like, so you need to show for it, you need to actually see, like people need to see that you have other things. We say something. It's more like our tagline, which is competence over credentials. And I just wanted to like relay it to bit. I know you've like said so much about the importance of having the certifications, the credentials. Also, what role does competence, having those skills in real sense, what does it play, and how does it like play in your own career path? So
Yeah,
in cyber.
yeah, I think competence over credentials, that's important. For me, I would say that being able to showcase what you have on paper is absolutely important, right? You don't want to put all this technical or cybersecurity jargon on your resume, and if you're asked like a simple question, oh, maybe tell me about this project you worked on, like you're not able to articulate, maybe because you're still new and you're getting to understand what that specific certification is. So I would definitely say, for me, what has worked for me in the past is being able to take on hands-on projects. You cannot beat that with a certification. Like I said, a certification is more so getting your foot in the door, like being able to sort of put yourself I'll say in a smaller pool of qualified candidates. But once you've passed that screening process, how are you able to show that you indeed know your stuff, right? So if you're looking to get into cybersecurity, um, I would strongly suggest having projects that you've worked on, whether it's like portfolio. It doesn't have to be technical, whether it's like the portfolio of project that you've worked on in the past. It could be like a website that has shown, let's say, the organizations or the individuals you worked with, pretty much what the mission and objective was and what value you brought. For the technical people, right, it's kind of easier to showcase your project using GitHub. GitHub is, the number one source code repository. So if you're able to push out your code on GitHub, that also shows like, sort of the timeline of when you started working on stuff like this. So I think it's very important to credentialize yourself, not only with knowing, but also with giving yourself exposure online. So that when I type in your name and I see your GitHub repo and I see all the tools and stuff you've done, plus the certifications, then your profile definitely will stand out.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I mean, it's great that you are also accepting to one of the things that we always like lay emphasis on in what we do at Analytics. So, a more personal question would be that, we've worked in various industries, we've worked in finance, tech, healthcare, retail. How does cybersecurity differ across these sectors? And also, just like a two-in-one question, what are those common myths and or misconception that people have about working in cybersecurity? I know one for sure about the myth is that you don't need. People say, "Oh, you don't." They don't do too much coding in cybersecurity. They don't. Don't worry. Once you get there, it's fast. You're going to get that career. You get that kind of thing. So yeah, what are those common myths and misconceptions? And secondly, what are the different ways in the across the sectors that you've worked? Yeah, what are those things that you would say that differs across each sector? Yeah.
Sounds good. So maybe I'll start with the sector topic. Then I'll go into the misconception. So working in consulting has pretty much enabled me see different facets of cybersecurity across different sectors. And with my clients, they're Fortune 500 companies, so they're highly regulated, right? So these are US-based clients that have, let's say, industry standards that they need to follow. But although they differ in some way, shape, or form, I would say that the messaging and the process, may look, different, like I said, but the goal is pretty much the same. It's very simple, right? So it's to protect data, and to ensure that it's not accessible to outsiders or anyone else that doesn't need to have that data. And also another aspect to this, is that the underlying system that pretty much govern the data store the data, they're functional and operable. So you go back to CIA triad, it's pretty much the same goal, right? Ensuring confidentiality, ensuring integrity, that data hasn't changed, ensuring availability, that it's always there when you need it, right? So giving a specific example. So in retail, like in real estate stores, whether it's like, I don't know, a grocery store or a clothing store, if you're working in cybersecurity in the vaccine, right, you probably see hundreds, thousands, if not millions of transactions on a daily basis. So your kind of goal, right, or your focus is likely to protect that data that is coming. Let's say credit card data, debit card data, following industry standards such as the PCI DSS that I think I mentioned this briefly. So if you want to specialize in retail, I would suggest taking up the payment card industry data security standard is the full name. Try looking it up and seeing what those controls are, because a lot of these regulations have step-by-step controls that you pretty much need to align with, right? So it pretty much helps with the retail side of things. And then moving on to finance. So similar to retail, right? There's a focus on protecting user information. But then there's also another layer, right? Because a lot of banking systems, they're interconnected. So they connect to third-party services to maybe get credit card data, or to get, credit scores, for instance. If your organization is sort of in that service line. And so your thought process will be mostly, how are these systems interconnected? How can I protect the data that is being passed across systems? And how do I ensure that the right controls are there? Because you don't want to give privilege. You don't want to over give access to a specific system, right? It only needs access to, let's say, pool credit card data, but you're giving it access to also set, username and passwords, for instance, which is ridiculous, right? So you want to think from that lens. And also finance, there's a lot of detections within anti-money laundering, and so that's where security comes into play. So let's say there is an off-track activity. Maybe my bank messages me and says, hey, we saw that you swiped your card in Malaysia, but you're based in Canada or you're based in Nigeria. Why is, like, you need to verify, right, why that is happening. And so that's kind of like the short story of finance. With healthcare, it could also be similar, because again, there's still some level of financial transaction, as let's say you're paying for medication or you're going to the doctor and you need to make like a copay. But the focus here is mostly on the patient's health data. Again, these are very specific examples for regulated industries, so it may look different, depending on what industries like you interact with. But with healthcare, right, it's kind of like you have nurses, you have pharmacists, you have doctors, you have physician assistants, and they need to only see patient data on a need to know basis, right? So outside of that perimeter, no one else should have access to your healthcare records. In the US, right, as I mentioned, there's more regulation and more caution on like finance, healthcare, because there are actually federal regulations governing, information security and data privacy, just like, HIPAA. HIPAA is a big thing in healthcare. And so I give an example with this. So like, right, if you go in and let's say you have a fever, and then they take a lab, they do like a blood draw, they take a lab test, right? And let's say they call you back to review your results. If you're aware of this, like, it's really amazing, because if you're not the one on the phone that gets the call, they're not going to let anyone else know your test results until you give the consent to. So it's kind of like intertwining like security, but also like privacy. So I think it's these fields are very interesting, and they have like their own sort of caveats to them, but overall it's kind of achieving the same goal, which is to protect data. And then I know the second part of this were the myths and misconceptions. So I think we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, right? For one, breaking down that cybersecurity is not only it's not only hacking. So that's one myth I want to just throw out of the window, right? So and the other thing is that yes, technical skills are needed, but those aren't the only thing you should focus on. Because what I've seen, like in cybersecurity, especially as you're climbing up the career ladder, as you're becoming from entry level to mid level to senior level, I think you need to be able to communicate technical details or technical jargons, is what I say, to stakeholders that are pretty much executive level. They don't understand what pen testing is. They don't understand what SAST is. They don't understand what prompt poisoning is, right? So you have to be able to communicate in a way that is digestible to a technical and non-technical audience. And I see a lot of people that are very tech heavy struggling with that, right? So it's not, I kind of want to phase away from talking only about technical to actually the soft skills. So the first thing, like I mentioned, is being able to communicate to all sorts of people, like product owners, directors, developers, like I said, executives. Like you need to be able to understand the different audience and tweak your language. Because you're more likely to, let's say, have presentations, maybe demo sessions, right? And I know it sounds a bit tricky, right? But it can be practiced. And I'm speaking from my end, right? I had to practice several times with coworkers, right? If I'm presenting, let's say, on a technical topic, but the audience is CISOs, like chief information security officers or CEOs. They don't understand the technical details, so you need to be able to break it down for them. So I would say that that's one thing that I really wanted to highlight out of all the myths, right? Because I think it's less talked about.
All right, thank you so much, Kelly. Before we go on to the next part of the conversation, which is around mentorship and how that has shaped your career path, there's something we do at the Tech Unbound podcast. So I'm going to spell the word cybersecurity, like CY, and you're going to tell me a first word that comes to your mind. Yes, just one word that comes to your mind. So I'm just going to tell you. So are we good to go?
Yes.
So 1, 2, ready. C,
Cat,
Y,
yarn,
B,
boy,
E,
elephant,
how,
S, fake.
E,
Wow. Egg,
C, U,
culture, umbrella.
U,
Okay.
R,
The reindeer,
I,
ice cream,
C,
telephone.
finally Y, and you cannot say yum. That's something else already.
Wow. Oh, yeah. You know,
Nice.
I also an animal, but that's all I could think about.
Um, So yeah, thank you so much for that. That was just to wrap up the energy before we go on to the second part of our conversation, which is around mentorship. So before we jump into mentorship, and then because you mentioned AI when we started the conversation. So a top up question would be with AI rapidly evolving, how is it influencing or transforming cybersecurity roles? Are they threats? Because they'll say, oh, AI will take away your role, AI will take away, AI is here to take away your job. So are they threats that you think AI is bringing into this career path?
Yeah, great question. AI is literally the only topic you can guarantee to be mentioned in every single room you walk into nowadays. So I'm happy, we're talking about AI as a whole. So I've seen AI enhance cybersecurity in various ways. And I would say there's less worry about total job eradication. I think it's more so about tailoring your skills to fit what is next. And cybersecurity is very relevant with AI. I think it was mentioned earlier that the White House released AI guidance and practices, you know, sort of paper, like I think it was on Wednesday. So we can see that there's an emphasis there on security. So to answer the question in a short way, right? I don't think you should be worried if you're in cybersecurity. I don't see how there's going to be like a total job eradication. However, there is a need to be able to improve your current working ways or your current ways of working. So, for instance, in security, right, there's a lot of redundant processes that are done on a day to day. There's like a lot of, I would say, deployments, which is very technical, I know, but a lot of push to like production, a lot of scripting, a lot of enhancements done on a regular basis, right? So you need to think from a lens of how can I make these processes faster and achieve a more accurate result so that I can also focus on more or other important things. So for instance, I would say one way that AI has actually changed, my job role or a responsibility in real life is through threat modeling. So threat modeling is where it's kind of like an assessment, right? Where you evaluate systems, be it like a cloud environment, or it could be like a simple application. It could be like an API gateway. It can be so simple, but not to get into the technical details, right? But the whole essence of threat modeling is to identify what threats there are within that system if it is actually deployed to use. And so typically this takes me days to maybe even weeks because I had to involve security architects, software architects, developers, product owners or product managers. And so it takes a lot of people's time, right? It takes a couple of days to get those meetings to understand the blueprints, right? The architecture and how systems of systems sort of interact with each other, what sort of data, is being passed across, in order to be able to actually do the threat analysis. And so I've realized that with starting sort of processes within threat modeling can actually be automated. So for instance, what would typically take me 2 or 3 days to draft, right? Because threat modeling, again, it's more like an assessment. So the output is a architecture diagram with identified threats and mitigations. And I kid you not, with AI involving sort of script and also including those sort of database of risk from, let's say, like the NVD or from MITRE ATT&CK framework. So these are like regulations or like standards that are across cybersecurity. So including those inputs into the database, running a script, connecting and integrating the script to your platform. Let's say you are reviewing an AWS environment. Within hours, I kid you not, you're able to get those threats listed out and then matched to those results. And I'm sure you're wondering, so what is my purpose in that scenario if it can be fully automated? And I was saying that AI is still rapidly evolving, right? So it makes some mistakes. We know that there's hallucination. There's sometimes, scenarios where you have to go back and definitely cross-check the results. So your goal now is to pretty much review the results and categorize the severities. You're no longer wasting time or also other people's time, right? You're able to target the operations, target the results, and actually produce a better quality because I'll say that it's faster, right? You save a lot of time and it's more efficient for you because you're able to do other things. So I know that's like a very specific example with AI and threat modeling, but it's really something that I've actually seen and experienced personally speaking. Another thing is with developers or security champions or AppSec, application security, I think I mentioned like GitHub, like number one source code tool in the world. What I say now is once we have the security scans running on like your source code repo to find vulnerabilities like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, there's a way on GitHub now. It's called the Autofix Copilot. So let's say it shows like this line of code has like a SQL injection vulnerability. It literally gives you the fix. It enables you to test it out and actually push it live, like include that fix live. So I think that's important, right? Because again, if we were to go back like 2 or 3 years, ago, it would be more of a manual process where the security expert has to come in and provide those recommendations. You have to test it out in, let's say, a lower environment before you push to production, so you don't want to break systems. So that whole sort of long process is now being streamlined. And I know how busy developers are, right? They have so many projects. A lot of developers, at least I know, they are on multiple projects. So that gives them enough time to pretty much enable security and make security the utmost importance with your development, but also focus on other things.
Yeah, I think it's important how you kind of itemize the two things that pops up in my head, which is one, that AI is here to stay because it makes our work like easier and it makes it faster from those examples you shared. Another thing that I think I've picked up is the human factor. Like you cannot remove the human factor from whatever career, especially in cybersecurity. Like you mentioned, you cannot remove the human, regardless of thousands of ways AI can help. You cannot just remove the human factor. They have to be that human touch, the human, they call it sprinkle on it. So just spice it up and make it better. So yeah, thank you so much for that. So right on to the mentorship aspect of our conversation. Would be to ask you, why is mentorship, like in your years of career or your career journey, how has the mentorship shaped your career path, and why is mentorship critical in cybersecurity or in tech in general? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm big on mentorship. I mentor with a lot of nonprofits and colleges, and it's really because, excuse me, mentorship has affected me personally, of course, in a positive way. Like when I first started, I think I mentioned this earlier, where I started in consulting. Consulting, it's a different ballgame in its own. It's very fast paced and things move very quickly. You're expected to have deliverables on a rolling basis, right? And imagine being new to that world and also being new to security. I was overwhelmed when I first started in security consulting. And so thankfully, the company I was with on that time, they assigned me like a counselor. So everyone has a counselor, like a career coach, I would say. And my career coach was very helpful. Like I didn't know about OWASP Top 10 until I started working, at my first job. Through my coach, right, I was able to learn what are people like me, what are people in my specialization doing and learning. So that really helped me in the knowledge aspect to it. And, when I was planning to also go to grad school, mentorship also helped because I was able to get guideline and coaching, right? So my mentor has an MBA, although I didn't pursue an MBA, but he was able to give me guidance on what, admissions officers will look out for. He was also able to provide a recommendation letter because we had a close working relationship. And now, maybe taking it back to cybersecurity, I do get asked this question a lot, by the way. And I think it's because, you can easily go on ChatGPT, Google, and, type, oh, give me tips to get started on cybersecurity, give me tips to get started in tech. But I think there's an additional value of having a mentor that you can hear directly from and most likely looks like you, or at least has a similar story to you. So I think representation matters when it comes to mentorship. It's great to be able to work with people that look like you. I think, like I said earlier, right? And you're able to get very curated guidance because you have a close working relationship with the person versus it being sort of cut and dry. Oh, go through this, go through that. I kid you not, if you go to ChatGPT, it literally shows you what to do, but where is the personalization? Where does my story come into the picture? Because I think we all come from different backgrounds, different walks in life. So that personal aspect to it, I don't think it can be replaced by just, relying so heavily on search engines or AI. You need human beings that have worked in the industry maybe for years, maybe decades, right? That have that exposure, that have gone through different challenges and different successes that will be able to articulate and guide you through your career path. So I'm very keen on mentorship as a whole, and it's helped me personally speaking, and I think it would also help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the part where we give you the opportunity to give a shout out to one person that mentored you or that inspired you in the course of your career. So just one person. Yeah, if you should give a shout out to one person, what would you say to them at the moment?
Yes, and is it okay to mention their name or just to be
Can mention their name, yeah, so that they get to only what get to watch this podcast, they know that Kelly actually recognized the segment of the podcast. Yeah.
definitely? I'll say one person that comes to the top of my mind is Ramo. He's a pretty good director at my current firm. Um,
Wow.
he's pretty much high up there, right? He has an open door policy where it's whatever career goals or whatever thing that I pitch to him to me. Like for instance, I say, oh, I want to present more, I want to grow my presentation skills. He will put me on a presentation or to be able to grow my skills. And this literally happened last year. Where I was like, okay, you know what? I need to develop my soft skills more than technical skills at this point in my career. So I was speaking to him about it, and then he gave me an opportunity to present. Of course, it wasn't like, oh, you have to do this. It was never like that. But I felt like it was a great opportunity for me to be able to push myself past my limits. Um, there are other situations as well, right? Other times where I felt like I wanted to sort of move up the career ladder or climb up the career ladder, and he would actually sort of put my name out there to the decision makers. And it's happened like several times. And I just feel like it goes back to what we're saying about mentorship and advocate. Getting someone to advocate for you, getting someone that is your ally is very important, because there's some rooms that you may never be able to get access to without having people that already knows, is what I've learned. So yeah, shout out to Ramu. I took you watching this episode, and yeah, thank you for all that you do. You definitely been able to bring opportunities to me that I never would have gotten, without your advocacy. So I really want to shout
Thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, Ramio. A shout out to you. There's this conversation going on X where they say Nepo, Lapo. I don't think you got it across the conversation. So we would say that Ramio was your own route to the Nepo part of the conversation. But yeah, that aside, thank you so much. So one of the things that because we have like audience or people that don't even have like more tech background, they don't even, I don't know, to a large extent, right? They don't have like tech background and they want to do cybersecurity. Like they want to start their early career path into this line, right? What would be your one advice to them? Yes.
for non-technical background. I think in addition to all that we discussed, right, the certifications, hands-on lab if you decide to go the technical route, and seeking like online training. I would say staying on top of things, excuse me, would help you a lot, especially with the AI boom. You want to learn skill sets that are marketable. For instance, I know a lot of non-techies love like no code, low code solutions. Another one is like vibe coding. Right, vibe coding is where you prompt an LLM, large language model, and you pretty much tell them the features you want for like your application, specify sort of any sort of design, and then it pretty much brings up a website for you. Like for instance, Lovable, right? I've used Lovable before, and I was pretty much amazed with how quick it was able to create a website for me. Um, but back to like vibe coding, right? Vibe coding is kind of where you don't have programming experience, coding experience, but you're able to prompt an LLM and it spits back to you like code that you can pretty much use to, whether it's to create like an integration or whether it's to create your own sort of platform. So I think it's important to learn that, and it's also non-technical. You don't need to learn how to code, but if we're talking about cybersecurity, I cannot skip skip the part where it's like, I think also helping to also knowing, excuse me, to secure those code outputs is important, right? So there's also a technical side to it that I need to mention as a security person. And also I think security as a whole is like always changing. There's so many things happening and things that we're doing now that in the next year may no longer be relevant. So right, you want to be able to, like I said, get marketable skills, but also keep up to par with what's going on. And I think one way that has helped me, excuse me, is through networking, right? So joining local communities, joining local groups, right? We have like ISATA and cybersecurity is very big, ISC too. and they have webinars, they have free webinars, sometimes free trainings. But other times they may offer free scholarships for certifications. I know the Women in Cloud, Women in Cybersecurity, they offer so many learning opportunities for their members. So if you're looking to get into cloud security or security as a whole, definitely look into Women in Cybersecurity, Women in Cloud, ISC2, and ISACA.
Right. Also look into the analytics. I mean, yeah, because like when you mentioned like free, I remember like we had like a campaign in March, either a month where we did like a free scholarship to women to join our program. So it's also great that also to look out for those opportunities would also be for them to look out for those not like free some opportunity that you also need to like pay for you to get. I mean, knowledge now you have to pay to get the knowledge. That's important. Thank you so much for sharing that. So yeah, look out for women in cloud, like Kelly mentioned, and also look for other opportunities that would get you to that career path that you want. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Kelly. To wrap up our conversation today, it's just like for you to like a retrospective your career path, and if you could give an advice to your younger self, right? What's that one advice that you'd have given yourself looking back and now where you are right now? So and then the last one to wrap it up would be tell our audience where they can connect with you, how they can connect with the great work that you do. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my advice, and I think it's going to be very simple. Because I know we're very verbose with all the other sort of conversations, but this one is very simple, and trust me, it is. It's pretty much to ask for help where you are falling in the terms of, let's say you're on a new project, you're new to cybersecurity, and you may not even be a cybersecurity, you may be new to tech, or maybe you're already in tech, or you're new to a specific function that you're not per se used to, or you're struggling to, let's say, find a job, or you need help with revamping your resume. So many other use cases, right? All I would say is to ask for help. That has helped me in my past. Um, when I first got into consulting, like I said, it was very hectic. Consulting is a different ball game. You're supposed to work 40 hours a week, but sometimes it can get to 60 hours, right? So imagine being in the fast-paced environment where you pretty much have to be on the go, and also learning new concepts. It's a lot. It can be overwhelming. And I actually, this is something that I don't often talk about, but I did initially was a little bit like anxious, right, when I first started, because I wasn't sure if the cybersecurity consulting was for me. Um, but I realized that with my career counselor and with also other coworkers, I was able to ask for help. Like I was able to say, "Hey, this is where I'm struggling, and this is how it could, potentially help me." And guess what? I got the help that I needed. But I can imagine if I kept quiet and if I never said anything, I would have been internally frustrated. I would have been burnt out, and I probably would not have been productive. So I'll keep it as simple as that. And finally, if you have like any questions, if you need any specific advice within security or tech as a whole, you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there, so don't worry about if I'm going to see your message or not. I will. And it's my first and last name, Kelly Onu. So even if you just want to say hi, like feel free to connect with me, and yeah, we can take things up from there.
All right. Thank you so much. You ready from Kelly? Don't forget to ask for help. I mean, it's very important. I had to note that, it's also a reminder to, everyone watching that, you might not have it all when you're starting, or, you might not even know where to start from in the first place. But yeah, like Kelly said, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to always, we are open to people assisting you in any way. So thank you so much for coming on board today, Kelly. And we appreciate your time. Also connect with Kelly on LinkedIn, like she mentioned. And we hope that alumni, our students, even our audience that are hearing or they're watching this get to on a large scale connect more with you, and also we can keep the conversation going around cybersecurity, around tech. Thank you so much for your time and have a lovely day. Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Yeah. Bye. All right, we've heard it from Kelly, and it's been a wonderful session, and we appreciate our time. Right, so this is the end of this episode on Tech Unbound, and the topic was very inspiring and engaging. Like I mentioned, we played games, we had feedbacks from Kelly, and how she actually got into the space, building a cybersecurity career with purpose and mentorship. I'll see you on the next one. My name remains Alpha Toseni, and I am your beautiful oasis. All right. Have a lovely one.